So, Melissa, we know Butler Ventures has evolved, and indeed, internally, you don't even call it that anymore. So, can you share with us what that evolution has looked like, and what comprises Butler Ventures today? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the moniker Butler Ventures is simply the name of the entity within which we intentionally designed kind of three major units originally. One is the Transformation Lab, which is our R&D hub for future models of education, and the idea center, I would say, of Butler Ventures and now the university. The second was originally the Division of Professional Studies. So this was intended to be the delivery arm of new programs or new models that wouldn't necessarily fit in our traditional colleges. And then the third unit was our education venture investment arm, which was our way to partner with startup organizations that were solving higher ed challenges in very different ways than higher ed does, so that we could learn from those startups, but also contribute to those startups with our knowledge. So those three groups were intended to work together under Butler Ventures. I'd say where we are today is we have made a number of changes as we've, what you design is and you build is not always what you end up with, right? And so I think the major changes or what it looks like today is we dissolved the Division of Professional Studies over the last year. All of the online adult credit-bearing programs that were started and launched in Division of Professional Studies have moved into our colleges. On the education venture side, we have a new venture mechanism for the entire university we're building. So any future work that's related to education ventures will move into that. But I think the biggest change is the evolution of the Transformation Lab. So what was started as the R&D hub for things that would reside in ventures, really new models, because of an amazing team that we have there and the trust and collaboration they built with the university, we now run the all new academic programs, even our traditional undergraduate programs today. They stood up a continuous improvement arm for the university. They will be a helpful execution arm as we move into our next strategy, which we're launching later today. So they really have become not just an R&D hub that kind of sits off to the side, but they really have become the true innovation engine for the university.
So Chris, there's a lot of change from what was originally approved, it sounds like, from what Melissa just described. And I think one of the challenges in higher ed, as we were talking with Jim earlier, is the relationship with the board and the president. And I know we keep kind of coming back to this, but in the 9 years of doing this, of this podcast, the leadership stories we continue to hear is that tension between the board and the president. Somebody always wants to move faster. Somebody always wants to move slower. Usually there's alums on the board who say, well, it's not the way it was when I was here, right? Or there's business people on the board who say, I don't understand this thing called shared governance. Why can't we just do things? I don't have to do this in my day job, right? So, it takes a great deal, in our opinion, of kind of courage, trust, and risk tolerance for a board to support innovation. So I think it would be helpful for our listeners to understand, what type of dynamics must be present in a board to successfully achieve what Butler has. Like, even as these things were shifting over the years, what's your view as a trustee? What are the conversations you're having with the president, with people like Melissa, to understand this? Is it always happening just in a formal board meetings? Like, how are you understanding what's happening here so that the board could kind of get behind it? Because I think one of the things boards hate, one of the things presidents hate, are surprises, right? So how are you constantly not micromanaging, not managing the situation, but governing the situation?
Yeah. Another great question. I was driving on campus. By the way, it's homecoming this weekend, I should say. So it's timely you're here. And I bumped into another Butler trustee, and I shared with her that I was heading here. And it made me think about three kind of ideas in this dynamic piece. One is diversity of thought. Our trustees are incredibly diverse. We lean into the abolitionists who helped found Butler University. We have former Fortune 200 CFO. We have a federal judge who has served in the past. We have community activists and entrepreneurs. It's just very eclectic. And so, is there a diversity of thought around the boardroom and in the trustee table? And I can tell you, yes, there is. Honesty of approaching innovation and threats on the horizon. Are we being honest as trustees of what is coming at us? And President Danko and Melissa do an excellent job proposing these threats and listening to the threats and having honest discourse and conversation around the threats on the horizon. So diversity of thought around the table, honesty of approaching threats. And then the third is community-minded. We have neighborhoods in a city in Indianapolis that are surrounding us. And so the programs and the piloting, will that benefit the community? Will we get buy-in? If not, then how successful will we be? So I think we've seen fruits of this innovation play off very quickly. And Deem's sharing that Eli Lilly, one of the largest global foundations on planet Earth, is here in Indianapolis, about 10 minutes from here. And they have given generously to our innovation programs and pilots. And we've seen fruit of the Founders College. We've seen, with a 2-year startup, we've seen Butler Overseas, which we're launching in 2027, which is part of this innovation discussion that the trustees said, yes, 6 semesters, 6 continents, let students go out and get degrees in business and environmental studies. And so we have just been listened to, engaged authentically, and given a runway to have healthy discussion in the trustee table. And it's not just plop in for that quarterly meeting or zoom in for that committee meeting with their camera off. Like, it's really actively listening. And that's what Jim has fostered here on campus.
Catherine, I want to turn to you because the Transformation Lab has been mentioned a few times. You've launched initiatives within the Transformation Lab, this innovation arm, and I would love to make it more real for our listeners. Like, what does the work look like? The experience of working in the transformation look like? How's it staffed? You know, how as a faculty member, you got a teaching load, how do you interact with it? And how it changes then how your own time is allocated when you're working on a project there versus, you know, sort of the day-to-day teaching load and so forth.
Right. So I've been here for about 18 years, and I can say the Transformation Lab is one of the best entities on campus, hands down. They make innovation accessible for professors who might not know how to get started or things like that. But right now, like Butler Overseas was mentioned, I'm running the Butler Lifelong Learning Collaborative, which is a kind of an educational initiative for lifelong learners and older adults, senior citizens. And I've helped advise with Imaji, which is a Swedish ed tech company. So all sorts of really great projects going on that kind of fulfill that professional need. And also as someone who is a seasoned professor who is not drawn traditionally to administrative collegiate roles, this really gives professors a creative outlet and a leadership outlet that is different, I think, than other kind of pathways of like next steps.
So I want to stay there for a moment because I think it's interesting when you say it gives that creative outlet. You're advising an ed tech company, you're doing all these things that you wouldn't normally get to do, presumably. How has it changed the conversation among faculty around what innovation at Butler means? Like, you know, do faculty, it seems very different from what you were describing, you know, 15 years ago.
Right, it's doable. And like Jim said, we had a former dean who would always suggest yes. So it was always yes, let's figure it out. And now I feel like that's the culture of the entire university. Like, let's try it. We know who to go to. We know that the team is such a high quality, joyful team that we can, you know, enjoy the experience of working on a project. So I think that completely changed the culture of getting things done.